Aquaman is a character who's been on a real roller coaster the last few decades.
As hard as it may be to believe, the Oceanic Warrior was at one point DC's third most popular superhero behind Superman and Batman. The character even got his own animated series as part of a rotation with Superman. The action-packed show featured the voice acting talents of Marvin Miller, aka Robbie the Robot.
And then the Super Friends happened. Now, while the many incarnations of the Super Friends were popular, they often depicted Aquaman as the type of hero who was only useful when the other heroes really needed the assistance of a sea cucumber or something. And this would color the general populace's opinion on Aquaman for decades to come. The effects are still felt to this very day.
There have been numerous attempts at trying to revive Aquaman's popularity, most notably the recent film by James Wan starring Jason Momoa, as well as animated appearances on Justice League and Batman Brave and the Bold, the latter of which helped bring a lot of humor back to the character. And of course, there have been comics.
After the Crisis on Infinite Earths event rebooted the DC Universe, Aquaman would get a new mystical-based origin that I'll elaborate on later. Then in 1993, a new Aquaman ongoing series was launched with a 4-part miniseries that would recount the hero's early days written by Peter David. And that's what we're looking at today. This is Aquaman, Time and Tide.
Aquaman sits in an undersea cave going over the Atlantis Chronicles, a book by his mother Atlana. He's never held his mother in high regard, but he feels it's time he added his own perspective to the book. People have always had Aquaman as a hero, a term he's never been comfortable with. It's then that he flashes back to the time he first got his moniker. A villain known as the Trickster had just held up a cruise liner. One wrinkle, though, is that the guest list on the vessel included Barry Allen, aka the Flash. The two's tussling in the middle of the ocean upset much of the fish, who began calling Aquaman to the surface. The momentary distraction allowed the Trickster to ensnare the Flash in his slinky, causing the speedster to bang his head on a passing shark. Aquaman interceded on the Flash's behalf and confused the sharks, who have bad short-term memory, into swimming off. He took the Flash to a cave to recover, not trusting the ships passing by. The two bonded, with Barry bringing up the idea of being superhuman, a concept that Aquaman really didn't believe. Still, he was convinced the Trickster was bad news, and the two tracked him down in his getaway sub. Aquaman used a pod of orcas to entrap the sub and tricked the Trickster into launching a mackerel grenade in the vehicle. Flash then finished the villain off, and the two brought him back to custody in the city of Crescent Shore. Afterwards, Flash gave his new friend the name Aquaman after the A symbol on his belt, even though it's actually the Atlantean letter for Cha. The press ran with the Aquaman moniker, much to his disgust. A news report of the Trickster attempting an escape attempt broke as Aquaman was being pulled away by the mayor of Crescent Shores and his PR staff. They want to market Aquaman as the Ocean King, which further disgusted the hero. He fought them off and began heading back towards the ocean until he caught the Trickster's attention. The villain began annoying Aquaman to the point that Aquaman dropped him in one punch before returning to the ocean, though he and the Flash remained on good terms.
Okay, here's where I need to go over some of the tweaks to Aquaman's origin and why I haven't been referring to him all by some type of civilian identity. In the pre-crisis DCU, Aquaman was the offspring of the Atlantean princess Atlana and Tom Curry, a surface dweller. He was given the name Arthur Curry, and he became a superhero to better utilize his aquatic-based superpowers. In the post-crisis DCU, Aquaman is the son of Atlana and an undersea wizard named Atlan. His birth name is Orin, and he was cast aside from Atlantean society because apparently blondes are not common there, and he was deemed an unsuitable person. So they abandoned him on a reef to die, and that's where our story picks up.
The idea behind the abandonment was that exposure to the elements would eventually kill the baby Orin, much like any Atlantean being would. However, the child didn't die, but managed to use his telepathic abilities to contact a pod of dolphins. One of the dolphins, named Porm, had just lost a calf and felt the need to rescue Orin, despite the objections of the pod's leader, Trunk. Shortly afterward, Porm gave birth to another calf named Drin, and the rest of the pod took to raising Orin. A year and a half later, and Orin was learning to hunt like a dolphin. He struggled, but then managed to fight off a shark with a piece of coral he had grabbed in his hand. Deciding to hunt more like a human, Orin began to thrive. 10 years later, and Orin began struggling in the pod once more, as he was now a teenager and looking for mates. Knowing that he obviously couldn't mate with a dolphin, this made Porm encourage Orin to leave the pod and join the human race. Orin rejected the notion, but tried to take Drin on in a race instead. Unfortunately, Drin wound up leaping a little too high into the air and got caught up in a ship's propeller blade. Knowing that Drin wasn't going to last, the pod left with Orin staying behind to save his adopted brother. However, a group of sharks soon came by and pointed out that Drin was already dead at this point and was better served as food. Orin then bid a tearful goodbye to Drin and left to join humanity.
Not too long after this, Orin would be taken in by a lighthouse keeper named Arthur Curry, who basically adopted him and bestowed upon him his own name. Now, the elder Arthur Curry would raise the younger Arthur until one point where he mysteriously vanished, and Orin would once more wander the seas alone. It's here where the story picks up again.
Orin soon found himself in Alaska, coming to the aid of an Inupiat woman named Keiko and rescuing her from a bear. He was injured, though, and she brought him back to her home to recover. Keiko's home was in the midst of transition. The younger generation, like her cousin Orm, had begun utilizing outsider technology to hunt and fish, much to the chagrin of her traditionalist grandfather. As he recovered, Orm began dreaming of the ocean and being confronted by some type of supernatural entity. The being took the form of a wolf and demanded he turn himself over to her. Orm then woke up and was allowed to stay with Keiko's family in exchange for saving her life. Meanwhile, Orm was being confronted by his mother about his recent activities and the spiritual effects it was having on his family. He pointed out that he had provided them with a better life, and after all, he knew what his true lineage was.
If the name Orm sounds familiar to you, that's because he goes on to become one of Aquaman's greatest foes, the Ocean Master. He's also Orin's half-brother, with the two sharing the same father. In the pre-crisis, it was Tom Curry. In the post-crisis, it was Atlan.
Over the next few days, Orin grew closer to Keiko and her family. He even took the time to teach her baseball. However, she eventually became more interested in playing a different kind of game.
Really? In the middle of the snow?
As the two frostbite-riddled lovers basked in the afterglow, they failed to realize that they were being watched.
Ew.
When Orin woke up once more, Keiko was missing. He went out looking for her, only to find her torn to shreds. He took her back to her family and managed to save her life. While she recovered, Orin dreamt once more of the undersea witch. The witch had swallowed Keiko, intending to possess her soul forever. Orin managed to turn the sea life against the witch and free Keiko's soul. Waking to find Keiko fully recovered, Orin related the story to the others. Keiko's grandfather recognized the witch as Nuliajuk, the mythological mother of sea beasts. Fearing the family was now cursed, caused the old man to suffer a massive heart attack which proved fatal. Keiko's mother then angrily banished Orin from the house, and he fled. He returned 6 months later, only to find the dwelling long abandoned.
At this point in the story, we jump ahead to a time when Aquaman has assumed the throne of Atlantis and married Mera, a princess from a parallel water dimension called Zebel. Mera has the ability to form hardened weapons out of the water. The couple has also welcomed their firstborn child, Arthur Curry Jr. Aquaman is also flanked by two Atlantean human hybrid sidekicks. The first is Garth, aka Aqualad. Garth has similar abilities to Aquaman and was raised in the sister state of Shiaris. He also has several magical abilities on top of that. Also, there's Tula, aka Aquagirl, who also has similar abilities to Aquaman, though she was an orphan raised by the Atlantean elite. She was also briefly Aqualad's girlfriend until her death during the Crisis on Infinite Earths event.
During Arthur Jr.'s public unveiling, Aquaman soon found himself being approached by the Ocean Master, who issued a challenge over Dominion of the Sea. Aquaman rejected the challenge as he was no longer in a fighting mood. Also, the whole King of the Ocean title is really more symbolic. The aquatic realm is far too large with far too many creatures in it for one person to rule. But if Ocean Master really wanted to micromanage 70% of the planet and the quadrillions of creatures that lived in it, Orin was more than willing to let him try. So, Ocean Master challenged for rulership at Atlantis, only for Orin to wind up taking him down rather quickly. Aquaman then banished Ocean Master, not wanting to kill in front of his infant son, despite Mera and the others' pleas. He then returned to the celebration. However, when Aquaman and Mera slept that night, Ocean Master returned, slipping by Garth and Tula, who were too busy making out. Now he had a massive attack sub and began bombarding the Atlantean force field with torpedoes. Orin and Garth managed to turn one of the torpedoes back at the sub and then enter through the resulting hole. Unfortunately, they soon found themselves surrounded. It's then that Ocean Master revealed himself to be Orm from the Inupiat village, and he had been plotting his revenge ever since he saw Orin and Keiko's lovemaking session in the snow. Ever since, he wanted to ruin Aquaman for stealing the love of his life.
Again. Ew.
Returning to the present, Aquaman then recalled the last part of Orm's speech. The Ocean Master mentioned that he was the son of an undersea wizard. Aquaman then remembered a part of his mother's writings about how Atlan would have two sons, one light and one dark. He's now realized that Orm is in fact his half-brother. Back in the past, Mera blasted the sub, which allowed Aquaman to free himself and take down Ocean Master, who then set off his sub's self-destruct in order to escape. The two parents then vowed that no harm would ever come to their family again.
I got some bad news on that one.
Returning to the present, Orm finishes his writing in the Atlantis Chronicles, realizing that his mother's ramblings were maybe not as insane as previously thought. He's left to wonder, is he the child of light or of the dark?
And that concludes Aquaman, Time and Tide. How was it? Well, on the plus side, I do think the story is overall very intriguing. It does a good job of humanizing Aquaman, but not making him look too stupid or goofy. And I do think Peter David's trademark sardonic wit is on full display here. What with the scenes where Orm has to have it explained to him that he can't fall in love with a dolphin, to some of the scenes in Alaska, to obviously the whole shtick with Ocean Master, and you can't really be king of the sea. It's just, well, way too big for something like that to happen. So yeah, I think that's done really well, and the artwork is overall pretty decent. On the downside, this story feels a little too rushed. This is a 4-issue miniseries that really should be more like maybe even 8. Like, there's just parts of the story that feel like they're missing. And I know there were some parts done in a one-shot before this, but maybe that should have been included in the collection. I just, like, where was Arthur in the lighthouse with Arthur Curry, Aquaman, Arthur Curry, and the human who raised him at the lighthouse? Like, where was that bit? Like, it should have probably been in here. I think it would have done to expand the story a little bit more. Again, also, why was he abandoned on the reef? Like, I had to look that up in Wikipedia. I couldn't look that up in the comic. It probably should have been there. And I think padding the story out would also help with the story's biggest drawback, which is the whole relationship with Keiko. That is a character that seems to exist for the sole purpose of being killed. Well, sort of. I mean, you get the idea. I mean, it's like she meets Arthur, and within a couple of days, they're doing it in public, in the middle of the snow, where her cousin, who is also in love with her and is also Arthur's half-brother, yeah, again, like, do I really need to get more into that? It's like, maybe you could have again, if this thing were a few more issues longer, you could have maybe padded that story out a bit. Like, it wouldn't have completely redeemed her, but it comes across like, yeah, she just wanted to knock boots with the first white guy that crossed her path. And like I said before, the whole cousin thing makes it even creepier. And on top of all that, both characters are, quote, teenagers, which ends into another morally gray area. Like, just, like, yeah, it really comes across as being kind of scuzzy. But overall, it's not a really bad story at all. In fact, I rather enjoyed most of this. I am going to give Aquaman, Time and Tide a B. And with that, let's see what we're doing next time on the Random Trade Review.
Remember, you can help support my channel at patreon.com/sleepytimeforcat productions. There, you can request a trade to be put in the randomizer, aka the cardboard box. Also, remember, like, comment, share, subscribe, and ring that notification bell.